Chapter 16. The smell of incense was making Xing woozy. She had entered the temple to pray because she was too miserable to think straight on her own. There were several altars, to heaven, to the mountains, to the rivers, to the moon, to the earth, to the sun, to the soil, and to Kung Fu Zi. She had gone from one another praying. Stepmother would be furious that she'd come home without Yao Wang after taking all of this time. The willow switch would surely get a workout. And worst of all, if Xing applied the balm to Wei Ping too thickly or too thinly, or without the right amount of oil mixed with the powder, something awful could happen to her half-sister. She had been praying for guidance for a long time now, but maybe the dense fog of incense from the large pewter burners was confusing her too much because she still had no answers. She couldn't afford to stay here any longer. It was already afternoon. If she started out right now and kept up a good pace and nothing bad happened, it would take her the rest of the day and part of the next to get home. Maybe longer, actually, since she would duck down in the riverbank whenever she heard a clatter of wheels on the road. She would take no more chances with passing ox carts, no matter how many hours they might shorten her journey. She went to the doorway of the temple and shielded her eyes from the bright sunlight. An old man sat on the steps eating a bowl of ox intestines. She recognized him by the ringworm on his head. He was one of Yao Wang's patients. When he saw her, he lifted a string of Buddha beads tucked in his waist sash, shook them at her, and pointed into the square. He was pointing at a crowd pressed against Yao Wang in his cart. But this was not the usual type of crowd. There were 2 men in uniform, and people were talking angrily. Shang showed his teeth and growled at the man who held him at bay with a bamboo stick. Xing ran to Shang and threw her arms around the dog's neck. She looked back defiantly at the man with the stick. The man withdrew his stick. "He is not a real doctor. He's not a real Zhang Yi," he said loudly. "If he were a real Zhang Yi, he would send his patients to the state-run pharmacy for their medicine. He is nothing but a Lang Zong." "He costs little," said the man, looking around with a challenge in his eye, "because he's a quack, a wandering quack. A real doctor is thin because he works hard. This man is a load of blubber who hasn't done an honest day's work in his life. Look." He picked up one of Yao Wang's medicine jars and held it under the nose of one of the officials. "See, there's no national stamp on this jar, no trademark. These are unregulated drugs, phony drugs. How is an honorable man like me supposed to run a decent pharmacy if charlatans are allowed to sell their junk on the streets? I've already lost a week's worth of business because of him." The crowd of onlookers didn't say anything. Xing recognized several of them as having been Yao Wang's patients that very day. The official took the jar from the pharmacist's hand and examined it. He rubbed his cheek as he turned the jar this way and that. The second official leaned over Yao Wang's cart and touched the jar after jar. "Some of these jars have different labeling from others," he said. He picked up one of the jars that Xing had written on, and it tapped on the character Xing had added to each jar in place of the awkward tiger character that had been there before. It was a character that Xing had seen on all of the jars in Master Tang's house. "And here's the national trademark," said the official. The pharmacist shut his lips tight and his cheeks puffed out so big he looked like he would pop. "He put that trademark on himself. It's not under the glaze, it's on top. You can tell he did it himself. This is even worse than being a charlatan. This is a crime. According to the code, he should be beaten with bamboo. Many blows, at least 60. No, 70. I'll bare his buttocks myself and hold him down for you." Men could die from infections of the bloody bottom, and everyone knew that. It's my fault, not Yao Wang's. The words burst from Xing Xing in a high squeak. Everyone looked at her. They whispered to one another, and some of them giggled. Xing Xing felt the blood drain from her face. She thought she might faint. She leaned on Shang for support. Yao Wang, said the second official, raising an eyebrow. That's your name. Yao Wang is her pet name for me, said Yao Wang with a sheepish look. You know how foolish things can start with a child. Well, said the first official, rubbing hard at his cheek. Speak up, girl. I scraped off the words and wrote them again. I was trying to make them pretty. I didn't know about the trademark. Are you claiming that a pitiful little girl like you knows calligraphy? Asked the second official. Yao Wang's eyes instantly brightened. She's been learning, but slowly. Compare the lettering. He held out 2 jars, one with the ugly lettering and the one with Xing Xing's very nice writing. Which is that of a state representative, and which of that is of a mere girl? The second official, the one who had tapped his finger on the trademark, nodded vigorously. This is the girl's work. And he pointed to the jar with the ugly lettering. When she copied, she failed to copy the trademark, just as you would expect from a girl. We must not be too harsh on her, said Yao Wang. He shot Xing Xing a hard look that made her feel like she had been slapped. And then he looked at the officials and smiled sweetly. Kung Fu Zi is the master teacher of us all, he said humbly, and Kung Fu Zi says that the lack of talent in women is a virtue. The words bit like ants in Xing Xing's ears. That's right, said the first official, still rubbing his cheek. Common sense should guide us in this, as in all social matters. Common sense and the teachings of Kung Fu Zi. Mistakes by females shouldn't come under the code. This is a matter properly between a father and his errant daughter, not a matter for us. Even if the daughter wrote the ugly letters, said the pharmacist quickly, the jars with the other lettering and the stamps are counterfeit. They're not under the glaze. The father is culpable. I admit my guilt, said Yao Wang. Everyone looked at him now, and again the crowd whispered. When a jar is empty, said Yao Wang, in a voice so soft that everyone had to strain to hear, a poor man reuses it for whatever suits his needs. A label on top of the glaze can be changed to match the new contents. One under the glaze cannot. He bowed deeply. Poverty. This is the crime I am guilty of. Poverty has never been a crime in China, said the second official, and our new emperor would be aghast at the idea. He was a peasant himself as a boy, and a beggar at that. Everything's different now. Government officials are being chosen by merit these days, not by birth or wealth. I took a civil service examination to get this post, and he puffed out his chest. But listen to this Langzong's accent, said the pharmacist. He isn't from around here. He's probably not even from this province. He's a wanderer for sure. The first official put the jar he was still holding back into the cart. He rubbed his cheek. This is a new dynasty. The reign of Hung Wu values national unity above all else. There's no place for pride in one's native locality over pride in the empire. Besides, the man has clearly lived here a long time. His daughter talks just like you or me. Yao Wang took a small metal tube out of the cart. Would you like me to help you with that toothache? Asked the first official. The man stopped rubbing his cheek and smiled. A good diagnostician, he said. But this is a large town, and we have 3 Zongyis, in fact. My whole family goes to Master Sima whenever we have problems. No charge, said Yao Wang. Well, in that case. Wait, said the pharmacist. He is nothing but a Langzong. He doesn't know anything. He should at least have to pay in copper coins to get out of his punishment. Being a wandering doctor is no crime, said the second official, so long as he sells state-regulated drugs, which this doctor does. Punishing a man for what he has not been prohibited from doing is inhumane. The matter is settled. And then he turned to Yao Wang. It seems that some people don't want you in town. My advice to you is to leave. The sooner the better. Small villages will be more welcoming. Yao Wang bowed. Wise counsel, he said. And the crowd watched as Yao Wang set in place the acupuncture needles that would control the pain and then neatly extract the first official's rotten tooth. Only the pharmacist didn't stay for the show.